All right. Hi, my name is Janelle. I am a breastfeeding peer counselor at the Oxon Hill WIC office. And I have been a breastfeeding peer counselor for about 5 months now. No, a little longer than that. Maybe about 8 months now.
And my name is Graciela Salata. I'm a breastfeeding peer counselor for the Walker Mill Clinic through Greater Baden. I have three children, ages 6, 4, and soon to be 2.
Yes. I also have two children. My oldest is 11, and my youngest is also about to be 2. So Gracie and I connect with our 2-year-old toddlers. So I'll talk about my breastfeeding experience and as far as labor and delivery. So with my first daughter, I breastfed her for a little under 6 months. And I had a C-section with her. It was an emergency C-section. I did not get to do immediate skin to skin with her afterwards. And I also didn't get to initiate breastfeeding right away. But thankfully, we were able to do some breastfeeding until I stopped. With my second daughter, I was able to do immediate skin to skin, even with the cesarean. I also was able to initiate breastfeeding almost immediately after I was sewn up. So that was a much better experience. It was completely different than the first go around. And we are currently still breastfeeding at 22 months. Um, Hoping for an end in sight, maybe, but maybe. I'm leaving it up to her. So we're just trying to see where this toddler journey takes us.
Yeah. What were some challenges you think that between both of your babies, what were some challenges that you feel like you face? I heard you say like not having that immediate skin to skin. And as a peer counselor, we understand the importance of that. But like, how do you feel that became a challenge for you, for someone who may not know?
Yeah. So I think for me, not having the skin to skin made a huge difference because I didn't get to see my first daughter for several hours after giving birth. And it was a lot harder to get her initially latched on because they had already given her a bottle.
Mm,
So at the hospital, she was given a bottle of formula without, any consent from me because I wasn't sure if I was going to breastfeed. So when they brought her to me and I tried, it was a little bit harder. But with the help of a good lactation consultant, we were able to get latched on. So yeah.
nice.
How would
Any
you? How do
surprises?
you? Hmm?
Any surprises?
Not really. Um, Not really. She just did pretty good. My youngest daughter, she latched from the beginning like a pro. So she was good. How about yourself?
So so my oldest I breastfed for 3 months. My middle or my daughter, I breastfed her for 15 months, just about 16 months. And as you know, my youngest is still currently taking the cake and being the longest breastfed baby. We're a week away from 24 months exclusively. So there's no end in sight as of yet. I think the biggest challenge for me, honestly, are the many opinions of the outsiders. You're
Yes.
still nursing.
Yes.
When are you going to stop that?
Right.
Why are you still doing that? So, the negative connotation or the lack, the lack of the information that a lot of people are giving, I would feel like is the only challenge that I have faced.
Mhm.
Aside from, so many other things in the beginning, like he was my smallest baby. So being 6.5 pounds, their facial structures are a little different. He didn't latch on right away. We did have trouble. I had mastitis in the first 6 weeks. So there's like a whirlwind of things that went wrong. So when
Right.
someone says like, "Oh, you're still doing that," I'm like, "You don't understand.
The
You
journey
don't
it took to
understand
get
what we
here.
went through to get here. Like the fact that
Right.
we're going today, I'm proud. I mean, I'm tired. I'm very, very tired,
Yes.
but
But
I'm very, very proud. he's a lot more, he's a lot healthier. He's a lot smarter. He's not a picky eater in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So that's a really good thing. But I
Yeah.
think that that's like the only challenge, so to say, is like other people not understanding like why we choose to breastfeed for so long, or
Right.
why at 2 we're still breastfeeding. When
Mm-hmm.
I think, and it's our job to continue to educate people and
Absolutely.
understanding like the first 2 years, even if you go 3 years, it's the longer the better. And it's
Yeah.
beneficial for both the mom and the baby. And the longer
Absolutely.
you go, the longer you'll reap those benefits from
Yeah.
nursing.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And now that you brought up the benefits, I know that the theme for Black Breastfeeding Week is revive, reclaim, and restore. So, how do you think that your breastfeeding experience relates to um, that, that theme?
Yeah, so I have to say, I'm very impressed and honored, right, about the theme that has been selected for Black Breastfeeding Week.
Mhm.
With so much that's going on around us, aside from COVID, there's so many other situations internationally, internally, like domestic, even within your households at this point, right? Like our entire dynamics have changed drastically.
Right.
So the reclaim and the restore are the really, really biggest ones for me. Reclaiming one, not only your femininity, right? Like we're women, this is something we should embrace. This is something that every woman and baby can do.
Mm-hmm.
It not only restores us individually, but our babies. It's also making things a little bit more eco-friendly, less containers, less plastic, less metal, less
Mm-hmm.
waste, things of that nature. So restoring ourselves, restoring our planet, restoring our communities, because this is
Yes.
giving people a space to be able to come together, um, link in a way that they may not have thought that they could link before,
Right.
and really just reclaim your space, reclaim your happiness.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I know I've shared this story before, but that was one of the reasons why I chose to breastfeed the second time, because I didn't really have to have a cesarean section, a repeat. I actually wanted to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, also known as a VBAC,
Yeah,
and the doctors just weren't going for it. They were just like, no, 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 we're just going to give you a C-section date. And I felt at that point that my choice was taken from me on
absolutely,
how I wanted to bring my child into the
absolutely.
world. So breastfeeding was one thing that I held on to, and that's how it relates to that theme is, reviving and restoring my own self-worth as a mom. And I said, well, this is something that I can do, and no one can tell me that I have to stop. No
Yes,
one can tell me when I have to stop, how I have to
yes,
stop. uh,
yes,
so I'm holding on to it, right? And
yes.
so um, it makes it so much better to have those conversations with people who may not be knowledgeable of the breastfeeding or the journey behind it. And once they hear that story, it's like, oh, it makes sense. Yeah.
Like
uh,
that's your revive moment, right? Like that's your revive,
exactly.
your restore, your reclaim.
Yep, 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 absolutely. So what would you say is a funny moment that you share with any of your babies breastfeeding? I know we have tons of them, right?
Listen, COVID has unleashed a comical side of my children that I've never, I've never expected to see. My 4-year-old at this point thinks that she's a peer counselor. My 6-year-old, if he sees people giving babies bottles while we're out, he's like, "Why don't they just breastfeed their babies?" And I'm
Oh,
like, okay. I'm like, well, everybody has their own,
right.
their own preference.
Right,
Some people
right.
choose to, some people don't. While
Yeah,
yes, breastfeeding is a great thing, it's better for some people not to.
right,
Emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, whatever that standpoint may be.
right.
But I think our best one, you can leave it because the door's locked. Okay. Um, I think the best one so far is when I was nursing my daughter. My oldest son came to me and he's like, "Mommy, the baby's crying. She's hungry. She's hungry." And I'm like, "Yes, she is." And he's like, "Well, just give her boob. Just give her boob." And I'm like, "You can't just give boob." That's not how this works.
Right.
He's like, I'm like, I'm gonna warm up a bottle. No, she doesn't like bottles. She likes boobs. Boobs are what
Oh,
makes her happy. She eats boobs. She eats boobs. That
oh.
to this day, I think, is the funniest one that we've come across. How about you?
Mine actually was recently, like you said, COVID has opened up new doors. I am now breastfeeding everything in the house, every stuffed animal,
Yep,
every Barbie doll,
yep.
even
You're a
the
milkmaid.
dog is trying to
Yes.
get some of mommy's milk. And I constantly have to tell my youngest, okay, mommy's not feeding anybody right now. And so now she takes her baby and she sits in her stroller and she feeds her own baby. And I think it's so adorable to watch, but it's really comical. But like you said, they pick up everything from the way that we talk to our participants as being peer counselors to the way that we feed them, being breastfeeding mothers. So while it is extremely funny to watch, it's also amazing to see just how much they grasp just from
Yes.
watching us on a daily basis.
Yes. It is.
Yeah,
It is
definitely.
very, very interesting. And like you're saying, like with them watching us, right? Like that's the goal of our jobs, right? That what at least we hope to be the goal. So how do you feel like talking with someone else help you reach your breastfeeding goals?
So honestly, I will say going into breastfeeding, my youngest daughter, I wasn't sure how long I was going to go. I was just winging it. And it honestly wasn't until I started working as a peer counselor at WIC and met you and met our coordinator that I was like, oh, I don't have to stop at one. One was always like, I'm going to stop right there. So even hearing, your baby is a little bit older than mine and seeing that you were like, nope, I'm still going. I'm like, okay, so I can still go too. So that's why I think it's really important for us to have peer counselors, and because you can relate to those people. It's just like anything else. You meet someone, if they haven't gone through it, you really can't connect. But as a peer counselor, we connected with each other, and I just was like, oh, so I can keep pushing. Did I think I would keep pushing all the way until 2? No, but it looks like that's what's
Yeah.
gonna happen. How about for you?
So I have to say, speaking to someone helped a great, great deal. But speaking to the peer counselor specifically is honestly the reason I'm still breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
It, it started, like I said, I didn't reach out for much help or anything with my oldest, but with my next two, I definitely made sure that I was listening to the peer counselors and reaching out to them and really just staying on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even like when I was in Glen Burnie, the peer counselor that we work with out there, everyone knows that she is surefire, the one, the reason that I am where I am today. And
Right.
then even the young lady that was in our position prior to us played a really great deal. And social media highlights both of those lovely people. One in particular, which is near and dear to my heart because she is so close to us. But that peer counselor for DC is actually the one who I worked with last. And
Yeah.
she's the one that has kept tabs and is still keeping tabs on me and my youngest because we're still breastfeeding.
Great, great. Okay. So, what do you think are your thoughts on some challenges that women of color may face with reaching their breastfeeding goals?
That one is a really, really hard one.
Mhm.
Um, there's so many challenges, right? There's the lack of the care that they receive in beginning, in the beginning of their pregnancy or the lack thereof, I'll say. Some are not comfortable to ask certain questions that they should be able to ask. Some feel pressured into certain situations, kind of similar to what you were saying about your C-sections. You wanted to attempt the VBAC and it wasn't even an option for you. which I had a similar with my daughter. She was breech, and I wanted to attempt the breech delivery, and that wasn't even to be
Mm-hmm.
spoken of at that time. And
Right.
that was in 2016, which was only 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's so those are, those are just two of them. But then there's the negative connotation of breastfeeding hurts. They've
Right.
heard so many stories from so many people, their grandmothers, their aunts, that say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, breastfeeding hurts. You won't do it for too long. And
Right.
the baby's not getting enough. The baby's still crying. The baby's hungry. There's so many things, right? Like babies cry for tons of reasons that we don't even think of. It's
Mm-hmm.
too light. It's too dark. It's too loud. It's too quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, those are just a few, but I think with this year's and this week's theme, the Revive, Restore,
Mm-hmm.
reclaim, I really challenge every person, every African American woman or brown woman, as some will say, to take each one of those words and really find out how you define them for yourself, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone has a definition of something, but the way that you define it is the way that you're going to interpret it. What does
Right.
revive mean to you? What does restore mean to you? What does reclaim mean to you? And really
Mm-hmm.
deep dive into that and see where you stand in your own lane, right? And then you
Right.
can even take it a step further. Ask your girlfriends, ask your aunts, your mom, if your parents are still around, if you have a grandmother, hey, what do these words mean to you? And see if there's any place where you guys connect or disconnect, because there's nothing
Right.
wrong with the disconnect, right? We just have to be able to respect each other's boundaries and give each other the space and opportunity to be able to be open about certain things, even if it's uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable is another thing. Some
Right.
people they feel uncomfortable to nurse in public. I've spoken to plenty of moms that are like, oh, I'd rather just bottle feed in public and I'll breastfeed at home. And it's just like,
Right.
why do you choose that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because they're scared of what someone else will say and not realizing that it doesn't matter. Like this is the most natural thing to do. I think, especially women of color, we've been so sexualized, and breasts are just, such a sexual thing that we don't even look at it as being a nutrition source anymore. So that's a huge challenge that people
Yes.
face, not feeling that support from family and friends. You mentioned a great one. Oh, the baby's always hungry. You're not making enough milk. So a lot of times that's what we hear as peer counselors. I don't make enough. That's why I'm giving formula. When in reality, if you just would trust your body, most times you are going to make enough.
Yes. And then, like, my other question is, like, what is enough?
Right,
I
right.
always ask, well,
Yeah,
what's enough? If they're not
right,
hungry, what's enough?
right.
Yeah, I think that is I think it just kind of sheds light, right, on the importance of having the breastfeeding peer counselors at your fingertips, especially through COVID. I couldn't imagine one giving birth during COVID right now, just me as an individual.
Mhm.
Um, but to think, back to my experiences, even now, like you guys know, like I'll reach out to you and our coordinators, and I'll be like, hey, question, need help, idea. I can't imagine not having access to a breastfeeding peer counselor at this time. Aside from just breastfeeding, the peer counselors, we connect with them on a level where it's not nutrition, it's not a finger stick, it's not iron. While all of those things are important, everyone needs a chance to just kind of just take a breather,
Yes,
right? So we're
absolutely.
able to ask those questions like, have you eaten today? Have you showered today? When's the last time you've been out for fresh air? When's the last time you been on your porch or opened a window or anything? We have that time where we're able to talk to them. So I'm really thankful that WIC is still available and we're still fully functional during COVID, because the importance
Yes.
of the peer counselors, honestly, for some moms, it is that break. For moms that are only at homes with their babies and they don't have another person or another outlet, the peer counselor is their outlet. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. It's great having peer counselors. I mean, I feel like now, especially because we're not going into the clinics, it's so easy for because I think sometimes moms just don't feel like coming in. So now it's really easy for them to reach out to us,
Yeah.
knowing I can just do this through the phone, and I always have constant support. I have moms that'll just call, hey, I was just thinking about you and I just want to say thank you. So
Yes.
it really makes you feel, it makes me feel great with knowing that I'm making a difference in a mom's life, especially for our women of color, that they have that
Absolutely.
support. So what would you say
Absolutely.
would be if you could wrap it up and say, what would be your biggest word of advice to another woman of color regarding breastfeeding?
It's like you're reading my mind. I was gonna ask you that. I was literally gonna ask you that same thing. So I think the message that I would give to any mom, specifically a mom of color, that is thinking about breastfeeding or who is breastfeeding and isn't sure, or someone who's been doing it and is just like, why am I still doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Revive, reclaim, and restore. Really define those and really keep going. What is your why into breastfeeding? And if you don't have a why, try to find one, right? For me, it was the ease of it. I don't have to wash bottles. I don't have to get up to warm anything up. Um, that was for me. I don't know. A lot of other moms say they do it because they want the baby to be healthier, and that's a good option in itself. But for me, it's being able to stay in my bed and feed my baby. How about for you?
Yeah, so for me, I would say my biggest piece of advice is to just know that you are enough as a mom. It does not have to be. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be a one-way thing. Do what is best for you, your family, your baby. Don't let anyone discourage you or try to sway you into anything. You do what's best for you and feel confident in your decision. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
I think the only other advice I'd give is to make sure you reach out to your breastfeeding peer counselors.
Yes, we are here to help. We are here to help. Well, Gracie, it's been so great talking to you.
Oh, did we lose her?
I think we may have. Gracie.
Okay. Well, oh,
Oh, there she is.
Oh, it's telling me my connection's unstable. Bye. It was nice to talk to you.
Bye.